you're as good as the people around you. And if you don't learn that early in life, you're going to struggle. That's what we're put on this earth for, is to help each other out. And the more people you can help, the better. This is a really, really special opportunity for us to change the community, the culture, the world. As long as you know that you've done everything that you could possibly do to have an opportunity to win, hey, we can sleep at night.
Welcome you guys to the Level Up Lounge podcast. Here we have another episode, and this guest is a man I've been wanting to have on for a while now, and I know you guys can find a lot of value in this conversation, in this episode. So today's guest is a true legend in Texas high school football, the most winningest Hispanic head coach in the state's history. He has dedicated over 40 years to transforming football programs and mentoring young athletes across the state. From his early days as a standout multi-sport athlete at United High School to becoming its head coach and campus coordinator, his journey has truly come full circle. He's earned 238 career wins, led teams to 26 playoff appearances, and captured 13 district championships, 15 by-district titles, and 11 area championships. He's also been recognized Coach of the Year several times and selected twice to coach in the prestigious U.S. Army All-American Bowl. But what makes our guest truly special isn't just the wins, it's the way he leads. He builds strong young men, instills values, and creates a culture that extends far beyond the football field. Without further ado, Coach Sanchez, it's an honor to have you on the show.
Wow. What an introduction.
There's a lot of information I have to work with, but
yeah, it's obviously an honor to be here and, to be able to do the things that I've done and make the full circle. Like you said, it's an honor to be at United High School and been there 22 years. And, it's been special. Had some great stops along the way before I got here, but just blessed.
yeah, and it's great to see your success and what you accomplished thus far. And the way we usually do in the Level Up Lounge podcast is we start with a question, and then we're going to end with a question. So the first question is going to be a thought-provoking question. From there we can navigate the conversations and open up many other doors we can, walk through and have a conversation about. Okay. But as I mentioned before the show, conversation, just having a conversation, getting to know you, and also for the viewers to listen to what you experienced and how you developed your craft and to where we're at right now with this long list of accomplishments that I almost took out my breath because how much stuff I had to read. But yeah, this is it's going to be a great show. So I'm excited that you're here.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Appreciate you.
Yes, of course. Okay, so question number one. You ready?
Yes, sir.
So when you think back to your very first day as a coach, what's the biggest difference between the man who started then and the man who's sitting here right now?
Well, man, if I like you said, if I think back, man, I've always been such a competitor, in high school as an athlete, and everything that I did, I always wanted to be the best, and always strived to win, and at the beginning it was just all about working hard and teaching work habits and winning. Mm-hmm. And it's the culture part of the game wasn't even in my mind, because it was just work. We got to do. You got to do this, and we got to do that, and we got to get in more reps, and we got to, we just got to teach these kids how to work hard and how to be tough. And, the game has evolved so much. And, I've been blessed that I've had some young coaches that have joined me and, some outstanding coaches that have become head coaches and successful head coaches. So, we were able to keep up with the game and change with the times and do those things. But, the culture and of the team is so important nowadays because we're working with a different young man, and it's just not the same whether, they're not as disciplined, they're not as tough, all those kind of things kind of come into play. But, we know that we can get it out of them. But just building that culture and those relationships and the importance of teaching them, how to be a fine young man and how to do things right. And, as easy as teaching them how to say yes, sir, and no, sir, and, how that's going to help them in life. So, those things weren't as important to me when I first started.
Yeah.
I just wanted to win, at any cost. But just realize how much of an impact we are to these young men. At first, I had no idea. I didn't know that, I was shaping lives or changing lives or touching, different kids. But now that, you slow down and, you've been there and done that, and you start thinking about, wow, this is a really, really special opportunity for us to change, the community, the culture, the world, with the kids that we're dealing with and working with, and and trying to produce, a guy like you,
Thank you, Coach.
they didn't come any better. You're a fine young man. It was always yes or no, sir, and you were always ready to work and do things right. And obviously, you've been very successful because of the things that you learned, I think, through athletics. Obviously, you had outstanding parents, some of my favorite parents that I had the pleasure to meet as, I coached you and watched your sister play, and, just down-to-earth people that I'm sure your dad was a lot like me, a hard-working man that,
Yes, sir.
Worked his way up to where he's at and what he did. And, so it's changed a lot, and my
Yeah.
thoughts have changed a lot. And, I'm not saying I'm not competitive anymore because I want to win all the time, but obviously it's not the most important thing now. Been there, done that. I try to make sure that I understand how important it is to treat these young men right and to teach them right and to try to get them to understand how important it is to be a good person and try to teach them more of the life skills than just the football game.
Yeah, I love that answer, Coach. And I mean, that's a lot of my experiences come from the football field and the weight room and building that culture along with you and all the other coaches as well.
Correct.
I learned so much, and we had a phone call before this podcast happened, and I explained to you that you've taught me and other men lessons that I didn't know at the time,
Exactly.
but later in life when I went into the real world and started to mess with the beast of reality,
Right.
I understand that the little things matter, and you always say don't cut corners,
Yeah.
work hard, work as a team, and everything started to make sense and click. And I'm grateful for you and your leadership, and also the other coaches as well,
Correct.
for for giving us that foundation. You guys gave us like a foresight of what is to come.
Life.
Exactly. What is to come.
Yeah.
And I learned so many things through the perspective of hard work and in the football field. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Coach, but we were all sitting in the weight room. I think it was during our block, through the athletic class. And you asked us the question of what do we think the best class is in high school, like just in school. And then we all were listing science, math, reading, because so and so, everyone was trying to answer the question. And then you said right here, like this right here is a good class or the class for life, because you'll learn how to stay accountable. You learn to get here on time. And you went on the conversation and explained the reasons of what it means to show up, And I've taken that that valuable information and taking it with my life. And I mean, it's doing
That
so much
was
good.
definitely one of my pet peeves is teaching them to be on time, how important it is, you know, and keeping your commitment, keeping your word. You know, it's just so important that, you know, if they tell you to be here at 6:30, you know, you're here at 5:45 at least, you know, and be on time, be ready, be prepared. You know, I was really blessed, and you know, I can't do this podcast without mentioning my mentor and my coach and my coaches. You know that meant so much to me. Bob Loomis was my head football coach, and you know he more than anybody knew about culture and about teaching young men how to be good young men, you know, and taught us all those things. And, you know, I'll never forget the talk he gave us after a game. And, you know, he says, like, I want you guys to go home and tell your parents you love them, you know. Back in my days, that wasn't a common thing to tell your dad that you loved him, you know, and, you know, it was just different, you know, and, you know, my dad didn't express his love to us like that verbally, but you know, obviously we knew he loved us. And you know, I went home that night and told my dad I loved him, and he looked at me like, "Whoa, you know, where
Yeah.
did that come from?" You
Yeah.
know, but he was just that type of person, and you know, I ended up he was my second dad, my mentor. I worked for him for Jesus 11, 12 years when I graduated from high school, I mean, from college. Uh, he called me up and offered me a job, and he was at Mercedes at that time, and shoot, I packed up and took off. I taught a half a year. I finished in December. Taught a half a year at Clark Middle School
Yeah.
here in Laredo, and then I was off, and you know the cycle started. You know, I
Yeah.
was in Mercedes for 6 years with him. He left. I stayed behind 1 year, and then I followed him to Freer, and I was with him in Freer for 5 years. So obviously, you know, a big mentor of mine, Bob Ford. Also, one of my coaches was on the staff at Freer, so got to you know meet up with him again. A great influence. May he rest in peace. He passed about 3 or 4 months ago, but had the privilege of coaching both of their sons, you know, through my career. Coach Ford's son, Todd Ford, that became a very successful football coach. You know, I coached him in Freer and coached Coach Loomis's boy in Mercedes. So pretty neat cycle there.
Yeah. Everything seems to come around full circle.
Yeah, it sure does. And happened for me, and like I said earlier, I've been blessed. You know, you can't do these things also without the support of your wife and your family. And you know, obviously there was a time there when you know I kind of felt bad because I felt like I was, you know, gone so much and wasn't you know I was coaching everybody else's kid and wasn't spending the amount of time I should have spent with my kids. But you know, it all worked out, and you know I'm blessed with two beautiful kids. My daughter Alejandra, that is a coach now and very successful, very passionate, like her dad, and my son David that is doing well. Fingers crossed, he gets into the fire department, going through that process right now. But you know, they were both great athletes. Had the pleasure of coaching my son, and that was probably one of my neatest things that I did is had the opportunity to coach him and be with him, and that was special. But been blessed.
Yeah. That experience of coaching your son.
Yeah.
Were you waiting for that day to come as he
Oh
was
yeah.
coming up?
Yeah. I mean, you know, there would be games because he was in the sideline, you know, since he was little. You know, and my AD would tell me, hey, you know, your boy's kind of young. It's like, he'll be okay. We'll keep him in the background. You know, of course, he wasn't in the background. Well, sometimes I'd catch him throwing passes on the track over there. But, yeah, I'd see him there, and it's like, man, I can't wait till the day when I'm watching him out there on the field. And obviously, it was special when I got to see that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, Coach.
Yeah,
And I mean, from what I listed right now, the achievements you've had in the past and the achievements you're so on and so forth, that's upcoming. You've had so much success, but it's one thing to earn success, but then to maintain it is a whole different story. And you've done that several times and showed up. So my question to you, Coach, is how do you build such a consistent system where it's successful and maintain it, and also be a learner in the sense of evolving the system and how fast everything's moving? You know, the game's changing.
There's no doubt. I don't know. I just kind of, would have to say is just teaching, great work habits. And I'm a big believer in that. If you train the kids hard and you teach them how to work, and man, that's going to take them so far in the game of football and then in the game of life. So again, I mentioned earlier, I've been blessed with some outstanding assistant coaches and offensive and defensive coordinators, that have kept me young and kept me learning the game. And I'm very ambitious myself. I love the offensive side of the ball. Always been on that side of the ball, and always good enough to let those defensive coaches do their thing, and and trust in them, and let them coach. And that was something that I learned early is, man, you hire these coaches. Don't try to, do everything.
Yeah.
Give them that responsibility, and they're going to run with it, and they're going to be better because of it. And instead of you, trying to, run the whole show and telling them, how to do it and what not to do and those kind of things. Obviously, you're responsible for the outcome, but I guess to go back to your question is, just, discipline, hard work, not, those things will take you so far. And, I've been blessed. I've been in some good places with good coaches and great kids, that, they kind of fall into place, and people ask me that question, like, how does that happen? Like year after year, and we're blessed with some great middle school coaches that do an outstanding job. We coach those coaches to teach their kids our lingo and our terminology and our plays, and we get them into high school, and they already have an idea, and they. Whether it's just the respect, because I've been around for so long, that they just come in and they fall into place, and they know that they're going to act right, and they're going to do things right, and they're going to be respectful, and or else they're not going to play.
Yeah.
So I think that not letting them get away with the little things, takes you a long ways. And it's part of life. You can't cut edges. You can't try to get away with things, because it's going to catch up to you. And those are things that I think that we do a good job there at United, in letting those kids know that they're going to work hard, and they're going to be disciplined. They're going to be respectful. They're going to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. With class and obviously hard, and they're going to respect the game. So there's nobody that's bigger than the game. And I know you probably heard it before. Like,
Yes.
I don't care who you are or how good you are.
Yeah.
You're going to be just like everybody else, and we're going to treat them all the same, whether you're the best or the worst. And eventually it's going to work out.
Yeah. I love that, Coach. And question, I've been thinking about this. I was on the way over here, and I was wondering, has coaching always been something you wanted to do as a kid?
Yeah, that's funny, because we were talking about it right before this. Kind of got started really, the person that planted the seed was our basketball coach, Mauro Vasquez. When we were on the basketball team, he made all the varsity players go to an elementary school and coach an elementary team through the boys club. So each one of us went to a school, and we all had a team. We had little tryouts, or not tryouts. Whoever came out, they played, and we did drills with them, and it was like eye opening for the kids. This is the high school varsity player, is coming down here to coach us, But man, that was just so much fun, and you saw that light in the little kids' eyes that, when they made a basket or they won a game, it was like, they just, man, it was just a neat thing to see. And, man, I said, man, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then again, that's all I liked to do was play, I was obviously not the best student because all I wanted to do was play.
Yeah.
But, that kind of got me started, and I was telling your cousin here that we picked up a little league team. We coached the little league team, and it was all the guys that didn't make it to the big teams, and man, that was so much fun. And then Rusty Siegler, may he rest in peace, a great friend of mine, played high school and college ball with me. We were the ones that started the first basketball tournaments that we know of, or I know of, in Laredo. We put it in the paper, and when we graduated from high school, we were both playing at Laredo Junior College, and his dad was the basketball coach at Laredo Junior College, and I don't know if he told Rusty, hey, why don't you all do a little basketball summer program, So we started a little clinic, for little kids, or a little camp. And that was so much fun. So just kind of got started like that. And, it's like, hey, this is pretty neat. I didn't realize that I was, entering the best profession there is in America. There's not another profession like this, and some of the coaches talked about it, and every time I go to a clinic, every coach gets up there and says, man, we couldn't be in a better place, a better place to be able to touch lives and change lives and mold lives, and the way we share, in sports, we go and, I've spoke at many clinics that, hey, we go talk about our stuff, our passing game, my quarterback drills, or offensive line drills, whatever it is, and we share with each other, and, coaches come up to you and, hey, coach, will you be willing to share some video, or your training video, and this and that, and it's an open book, in other words, and just everybody's that way, because in all reality, it's not a secret. We know what you're going to do if you're the opposing team.
Yeah,
we share every game with our opponents. It used to be 3. Now, how many do you want?
Yeah.
If we got 10 games, we'll give you 10 games. You give us 10 games, and we break it down and look at each other, and we know what you're going to do. It's how well are you going to do it?
That's
how well are you gonna execute it? And that's what it comes down to. And that's why I'm a big believer in reps. And you probably remember those things. How many passes did you catch throughout your career? Every drill was catch the ball, run routes. And just reps. How many can we get in? How good can we execute? And I think that's a very important part of the game.
Yeah, that's I definitely remember all those football.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, you did. But it's because it always amazes me. Like, the other coaches know exactly what you're gonna do. You do film, we do film, we understand how they roll, but it comes down to the execution of the players.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and obviously, when you make that call or when you run that play. They don't know what you're going to run. They have an idea sometimes by formations, and man, it's crazy because we try to look at every little thing. What does a quarterback do before he snaps the ball?
Yeah.
Does he go to his towel every time he's going to throw it, or does he clap different, or you try to just pick up little things. There's one year that we picked up an offensive lineman. When it was pass, he didn't put his hand down. When it was run, he put his hand down.
Details.
So we're making calls as soon as we notice, and it gives you an advantage. So, you gotta be careful with what you do.
Yeah.
I tell my quarterbacks, you gotta stand the same way every time.
Yeah.
Whether it's run or pass, you gotta stand the same way. You can't give it away. So, because there's people, the other teams are looking at those things. But yeah, it's just it's a game of reps and execution and how good you can execute it. And obviously sometimes it gets into personnel.
Yeah.
And the guy on the other side is just way too fast and we can't catch him. It changes your angles that you've been using for 10 games or 12 games. All of a sudden we're in the third round. We're playing these guys from San Antonio and Austin, and they're a little bit faster than we are, and you try to tell your kids in practice, but it's kind of hard to simulate, speed.
Yeah.
So, I think our biggest advantage is there's not a lot of teams that throw the ball as much as we do. So for them to prepare for all our routes and what we do and our screens and, those kind of things in 4 days or 3 days, it's hard.
Yeah.
So, obviously,
Air raid all the way.
Yeah.
Air raid all the way.
It's been our way anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, or actually, you mentioned all the coaches, you go in the clinics and you all share each other's, I guess, techniques and approaches to the game. It's pretty cool how you guys share amongst like all that information. And what I'm hearing, it's more about who you surround yourself with. How much does that play into your role, I guess, as a coach, and I mean also as a man in general, growing up?
Oh yeah, you're as good as the people around you, and if you don't learn that early in life, you're gonna struggle because it's not about me. I've been blessed, and I get a lot of credit for all those wins and the things that we've done, but man, it's really about the guys that I've surrounded myself with, and and the great coaches that I've had on my staff, and I've kind of taken a step back, and at one time I called every play, and now it's just I've got Coach Eddie Huerta, that's my offensive coordinator, and there's been other Jose Briones and other coaches that we've had, Leo Mireles, and those guys took a role in calling plays and stuff. Obviously I'm the head coach, so I get the last word, but we communicate with each other, and I'll let them roll sometimes, and then sometimes I'll tell them let me roll, and different series or whatever, but we communicate very well. It's not an ego thing for me. I understand how blessed I've been and how lucky I've been, and being able to surround myself around, great people and great coaches and, ambitious coaches that want to be head coaches and, just do all the things, that need to be done without having to tell them. I'm blessed at this moment. I'm been in it for 44 years, so I get the question all the time, how much longer, Coach? It was probably one of your questions.
It was coming up.
But, it's, man, I wake up every morning and excited about the challenge and, excited about our kids and going out there and, trying to get them better and get them ready for the next year or for the next game or, for the next workout, and, when I get up in the morning and I say, man, I'm tired and it's just not fun anymore, then I think I'll get out. But if I die on the football field, I'll be happy.
Yeah. It's not work for you. It's a passion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a passion. And, when I tell you this, you're probably going to say, wow. But I'll be working for free next year. I can make as much money retired as I will be making coaching the game. So actually, I'll be losing a little bit of money.
Yeah.
I'll make more money if I retire next year than if I'm coaching. But it's not about the money. It's it's about my life and my health, and it keeps me going. It keeps me healthy, and it keeps me happy. And like I said, I'm blessed with a beautiful wife that's been with me for so long and supported me and moved with me. And it's like, hey, babe, what do you think? Ready to make another move? And she's always said yes. And if I were to tell her tomorrow, hey, man, I got a chance to go somewhere where, I think we could be really, really successful. And she'd say, let's go. That's a person she is. And, she gets completely involved. I've said it a few times at banquets. I remember when we first married, and she'd go to the game, and she'd tell me, man, that was a great call, and she didn't really know the game that well. Now I get home, it's like, why did you call that?
Yeah.
That was a bad call at that time. It's like, well, shoot. I tell people, if I would have known, I wouldn't have called it. But you gotta make a call sometimes within 20 seconds, and you got to get it rolling. But I've just been blessed with the support of my wife and my kids now, and it's been fun.
Yeah, support system's everything for you.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And when that day comes, you decide it's the day just to step away from the football field. What's chapter 2 look like?
I don't know, man. I'm a big fisherman, outdoor guy. I'm blessed. My mom inherited a ranch, and we have a ranch in Oilton, Texas, and really enjoy going out there. I'm a big fisherman and deer hunter, and I tell people I have a rifle and I will travel. So if you want to invite me, I'm ready to go. but I just I love being out in the country and going to different ranches and different places and seeing different things. But I don't know. I just can't see myself not doing anything.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's driving me right now. And I can't see myself sleeping late and getting up and going to sitting on a sofa and watching TV. I'm used to getting up at I'm at work by 6 o'clock in the morning. 6:15 at the latest, and and the day goes on. But I don't know. We'll see. Probably would like to do something where I'm still engaged with being around the game and being around the coaches and that camaraderie that we have with our coaching staff and even our coaches that coach our opponents. We all get along great, and we care for each other and we support each other, and just being around all those great coaches that are out there has been really special. And I would probably want to do something in that manner that I can still communicate with them.
Now we're on the topic with coaches. From your experience, you've been with many coaches, and you've seen different styles, different approaches to the game. In your opinion, what do you think separates someone from being a good coach and a great coach?
That's a tough one. I don't know, just their approach, maybe probably the way they treat the kids and the drive that they're able to bring out of their kids, because the knowledge part, man, I don't know, man. I just listened to a young coach that just got the job at Hutto, was at just an offensive mind. Like, wow, he was impressive. Like just his thought and his process and the things that he did. And it's like, wow, that kid's really sharp. But being sharp and knowing the game so well is not everything. It's, how do you get these kids to play? How do you get them to to have that the passion for the game and bring everything they have out of them. And I think those coaches that know how to motivate and know how to bring that passion, whether it be through hard work or love, you know, I think it's just something that some people have the knack for. You know, I would say I was pretty tough with our kids, and I expected a lot from them, and I demanded a lot from them, but I also tried to make sure that they understood, you know, how much I cared for them and how much I loved them, and that, you know, my door was always open, and if they ever needed anything, I was there for them. Tried to go, you know, into the dressing room after practices and after games, and you know, try to get to know a little bit about them, and you know, bring them into the office and just pull them aside. It's gotten to where that weight room workout is special to me, because that's more than anything. You know, I teach technique and stuff, but I walk around and I talk to the kids and how's your day? We work out at 7:00 in the morning, and you know, how things going? Is everything okay? You know, how are your classes going? And talk to them about, hey, maybe you know, you got to be a little more disciplined. You got to be here on time, or whatever it is. But I'm talking to the kids, and I'm getting to know the kids, and you know, we've got a lot of kids that their older brothers played for them.
Yeah,
and it's like, hey, how's your brother doing? You know, and been blessed with great parents and booster club people that, you know, I get to know well, and their kids are in there. And hey, how's your dad doing? Or, you know, whatever it is, just, you know, like you say, shoot the bull with them, you know, and try to get to know them a little bit better. And I think the closer that you get with your kids, the harder they're going to fight for you or run through a wall for you, whatever the case may be, or however you want to say it. But you got to have that ability to touch your kids through love and communication, and have them play hard for you. And I guess, you know, the saying is, you know, it's not what you know, but, you know, how much they know you love them. You know, that's important in the game. They got to know that you care about them, and that, you know, they're important to you, and they'll do anything for you when they know that you care for them. So I guess those coaches that can do those things and tap into that, you know, are going to have a chance to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful thing to have as a coach. I mean, just a person in general. If you're able to feed belief into someone and allow them to seek out the potential themselves, but you give them the space, you make them feel comfortable, you show them that love, they will, you know, spring, and they would become the man or woman, you know, who they want to be, because you fed them that belief. And I think you guys do such a good job of that. I know myself, and a lot of other people in the program as well. You guys did a really good job of creating that chemistry and family. It wasn't football anymore. It was a family thing. And when we go out to go play a game, we're going to war together.
Exactly.
We took that approach, and I said, like, we would run through a wall for you guys, like, no doubt. And you know, when we have success, you know, thank God we had some success. It was one of the sweetest moments, and I will remember that. And hundreds, if not thousands, of kids that passed through your program will remember memories in the locker room, memories in the weight room, and the field. And that is, I mean, it's a blessing that I had the opportunity to come by your leadership and all the other coaches and the culture of United High School. It's more than a game. It's more than a game, is what I discovered.
There's no to cultivate that family atmosphere, you know, and we break every day, and every time we break, it's family and love. You know, we say it every day, and you know, we try to live by it. You know, it's not just saying it; it's about, you know, getting to know the kids and them coming together. And I think Coach Villaseñor is our defensive coordinator at the time. Does an outstanding job of our off season. He's in charge of our weightlifting and off season program, and you know, those are things that he highly believes in, and he does questions for him, pulls out questions, and before we start our after school workout, or he'll get somebody to go up there and talk, and just trying to bring them closer together and trying to make them understand how important it is to be a family.
Yes.
And
Yes.
to learn that, hey, we're gonna go out there and like you said the right word, it's a war, but we're gonna do it together.
Yeah.
And it's like they say, if you get a handful of pencils and they're all close together, it's hard to break.
Yeah.
You put one or two between your fingers and you'll break them real easy.
Yeah.
So it's about bringing everybody together and everybody being on the same page, and everybody loving and caring for each other. And if you and I have busted our butt day after day, and we're not going to give up. We're going to support each other, and we're going to help each other, and we're going to try to make sure that we get the job done. And so yeah, I think that's the way it is. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
It should be a fine knit group of young men that are coming together for one purpose, and to get close together and to be a family, and go and enjoy the game. Like you said, man, those are special moments, win a district championship and bi-district championship and an area championship, and man, those were special times. And, I've been blessed to be part of those. And just seeing the gleam in your guys, in the players' eyes is what it's all about to us, as coaches, and it'll get you to wake up the next morning.
Yeah, it will. It sure does. And it's within like my class and my friend group, we've gotten so close because of football. You guys, we woke up 6 a.m. in the morning, and then we practiced right after school. We went through so many hard times together, but that's what built our relationship. And now we're at 5 years later. I think I graduated from high school, or 6 years maybe. We're still as close as we were back then. And again, kind of going back, just the culture you guys cultivate and how much love and affection you give us and show us, we apply it to our own lives, and it's been multiplying, right? I mean, that's part of the reason here in the podcast. I'm looking to impact other people, just how you're impacting other people as well. So what I've realized as I got older, it's not about receiving, it's more about giving.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. It's sharing that love and helping people. And kind of I don't want to get into politics, but I think that that's what we're put on this earth for, is to help each other out. And the more people you can help, the better. In whatever way you can, whether it's through love or giving a helping hand, or opening a door, or sharing money, or whatever the case may be. But that love is so important. And I probably told your group, I tell them all, it's like these people that are in this room going through what you're going through right now, you'll never forget, and they'll be your best friends, and they'll be people that you can count on and call and ask for help, or communicate with for the rest of your life, and those are still some of my closest friends. Are the kids that, the players that I played with. I just drove, I don't know, 300 miles, to go see one of my friends,
Yeah.
Robert Gregory. We spend a lot of time together and played all the sports together, and, we went to go visit him and spend a few days there with him and his wife. And, those are special moments, and
Yeah. It's in the opportunity you have, such a blessing to be at that I guess stage of life, especially young men. That's where we're the most, we're growing into young men at that stage.
Right.
For you to have the opportunity to feed us, belief, faith, hope, love, all these good positive emotions, and then send us out to the world. It's a blessing. And now I can see this is not a job for you. This is a passion. It's something, how you said, you see a light in their eyes when you're coaching, you're out there on the field with them. And even though sometimes, you you got to play a little hardball on
Oh,
us.
there's no doubt. But
Yeah.
like I tell them, hey, it's always tough love, and sometimes we need to get on to you, and you probably deserve it if we do,
Yeah. Yeah.
But you need to understand that, hey, it needs to be done this way, and you're gonna get better from it,
Mhm.
So yeah, there's always some tough love, and but they understand, and it all works out,
Yeah.
and uh, man, I had a thought in my mind and I forgot. But anyway, uh, like you were saying, you're starting to realize all the things that the game did for you, and sometimes it takes a while. At the time, it's like growing up. When your
Mhm.
dad would get mad at you and spank you or whatever and tell you, hey, you can't do that, and you didn't understand why, and
Mhm.
you didn't understand why he didn't let you go to this party,
Mhm.
or whatever, But later on, you realize, like, man, made a lot of sense, and
Yeah.
it takes a while to understand where they're coming from, and
Mhm.
thank God they did what they did,
Mhm. Yeah. I want to ask you a question, Coach.
uh,
Your experience, you've had so many experiences, so many challenges and obstacles you went through and successes. Throughout your career, what is one story you can share with me that was a pivotal moment for you in your coaching career? I guess maybe something that clicked, or something that stuck with you that you will remember. Um, I mean,
yeah.
to the end.
Uh, Till the end, well, obviously, the relationship that I had with Bob Loomis, and there were so many moments, when we coached there at Freer, it was a small community, and I lived next door to him. He had a house, and I had my trailer right next door to him, and we would walk home, after practices and after games and stuff, and after a tough game, we lost a game to get into the playoffs, and we're walking back home, and he tells me, David, uh, we got nothing to be ashamed of. He says, I want you to learn this now, and take it with you for the rest of your life. He says, as long as you know that you've done everything that you could possibly do, you crossed all your T's, dotted all your I's, you gave your kids the opportunity to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not going to work out and you're going to lose. But as long as you know those things, that you did everything in your mind to prepare those young men to have an opportunity to win, hey, we can sleep at night.
Mm.
Says, go home, have a good night's sleep. I think we did that, and just didn't work out for us,
Mm-hmm.
And that always, always, always stuck in my mind, those words, Sometimes, you're outmatched.
Yeah. Yeah.
You play against teams that got more talent, or they're faster, or hell, they're better coached,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But you did everything that you could possibly do, and you did it your way, and you tried to everything that you could possibly do to prepare your team, and
Mm-hmm.
hell, you lost the game. Sometimes, how many times have I been beat on a lucky play, or
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, golly, just wasn't meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
But if you've done your homework, and you've prepared your kids, and you can go home and sleep at night, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
The sun's going to come up the next day, and I think those are some of the wisest words that I've ever heard, or that helped me in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Because man, you can be one of those guys that you just don't let those losses get away, or you can't get past them, and it just
Mm-hmm.
you know shit, it drives you crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and shit, you're having problems, health problems,
Mm-hmm.
so me hearing those words, and taking that to heart, and understanding that you know sometimes you're not going to win it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're going to be better than you. Sometimes there's going to be a lucky play that beats you, and but as long as you did everything you could to prepare your team, then hey, you can go home and sleep at night and wake up the next day and shoot, try it again.
Yeah, the
Right?
sun came up again.
Yeah,
There's
that's
another
right.
opportunity.
You probably heard me tell you all, after a loss, like, hey, we got to go back to work. It's okay.
Yeah.
The sun came up this morning, right, guys?
Yeah.
Let's move on. And, it's a learning experience, and let's try to do it better next time. And move on. But yeah, those were special words. I hadn't thought about that in a while, but obviously you brought that those thoughts and that special moment that I think made a big difference in my life. Yeah, I can talk about special games and wow, what game changed your, which is the most satisfying game and this and that, and there's been many, and there's been I've been blessed to say that, but. Probably that moment with Coach Loomis walking home after a tough loss and him expressing those words to me, I think made a big difference in the way I approach the game and life and my career. So
that's very powerful.
Yeah,
very powerful. And I think in my own life, I've had to learn that lesson of just letting go.
Yeah.
Letting go, as long as your head hits a pillow, you tried your best, and let life take its course.
Exactly.
Because if you try to control too much, you try to put too many hands, on whatever it is, just very much controlling, then you're trying to control the world, but you really can't do that. And there's peace in that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of peace in letting go.
There's no doubt, and you've got to learn to do that, because there's going to be a lot of moments in your life that you're going to have to say, hey, man, just let it go. Let's move on, and, whether it's, let's prepare better next time. Let's go into it with a different mindset, or shit, I need to learn more,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into something that I really don't know yet. And, I need to study it a little bit better. It's like taking an exam, going through college, those are just little hurdles that we had to jump to get to where we wanted to go, and, sometimes you didn't clear that hurdle, but, you got to get up, dust yourself off and go again, and like I said earlier, as long as you know that you did everything you could to prepare and to get the kids ready or get yourself ready, then hey, you can move on. Let it go.
Yeah.
I my daughter was so competitive. Allie was just, she wanted to be perfect all the time. I had to go through those things with her and tell her, hey, you're not going to kill the ball every time you hit it.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to set it right every time you set the ball. Just, let it go. Let it go,
Yeah.
Don't let it drive you nuts. I mean, it's like 1, 2, 3, boom, let's move on to the next play.
Yeah.
And that, she was one. Obviously, I was, but I've had a lot of kids like that, they want to be perfectionists, and they want to point the finger somewhere else. It's like, hey, don't point the finger somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just accept it, man, and let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next play.
Yes. Yes. You just take what you take the lessons you learn from the experience, and then apply it to the next stop, the next hurdle. That's right. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, that was a great question and very powerful in my career. That was a neat thought there, and a reminder of those special words that Coach Loomis said to me, and never been forgotten. And I try to live by it. So. I'm glad I was able to reopen that door. To reopen that thought. That was special. Yeah, awesome, Coach. Well, so we're getting to the end of the podcast, but as I explained before, there's one question in the beginning, and we have one question in the end, and then we'll do an outro, and that'll be it for the episode. Okay. So one last question, and before we get to the last question, thank you so much, Coach, for being so open and sharing your story and being very raw and
Yeah.
being yourself. I know a lot of people are going to find a lot of value in this episode. They're going to like it a lot. And I hope you subscribers, people listening out there, just listen to this with your open heart and what you learned from this episode. Apply it in your life, what you've learned from Coach Sanchez and this conversation. And, just go on to the next hurdle, right? Go on to the next hurdle.
Yes, sir. That's all we can do.
Yeah, that's all we can do. That's all we can do.
You can't let it stress you out and take you where you don't want to go.
Yeah. As long as the sun is up, we got another opportunity.
We got another day.
Yes, sir. All right. So the last question I have for you, Coach Sanchez, is what's been your proudest moment as a coach, not in terms of wins, but in terms of impact?
There's probably been several. Obviously, man, being able to coach my son, I kind of mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Man, I was just such a proud dad that, be able to hug him before a game and hug him after the game. And, obviously I was blessed that he was a pretty good athlete, and
a really
he,
good athlete.
He did some special things out on the football field for me. And that was obviously special. And being able to see my daughter play at the level that she played in and the things that she was able to do and, the leadership that she showed and grew up to be. And, she's a really outstanding coach. The girls just gravitate to her and she treats them so well. And, so those are obviously real proud moments in my life. And obviously that's the way it should be. It's always family first,
Yes, sir.
and, obviously God, family, and, whatever that other thing is for you, whether it's football or basketball or, gardening or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you just, you learn to put those things in place. But those were very, very, very proud moments in my life. I can get into wins and, there was many wins that, man, I was so proud of our kids, and the way that they performed and, the things that they were able to overcome and the way they played the game with class and, it's just, I guess the other thing is, being able to be a mentor to so many coaches and seeing those coaches that worked with me go on to be so successful in their careers as head coaches. I think there's been I don't know, I stopped counting a while back, but at one time I counted 12 coaches that were on my staff that became head coaches and, 15 or 20 that became coordinators. And those are obviously, proud moments and they know that I'm there for them in any way or fashion. And, played against a lot of them now, that were on my staff and became head coaches. And, obviously I don't want to lose to them, but it's happened. And hey, I've learned to be a big boy and move on and appreciate what they've done and the success that they've had, but those are definitely proud moments. And seeing young men come up to me and say hi like you and, seeing the success that you've had and some of these, coaches or players that I've coached and, become doctors and lawyers and, family guys and see them with their kids and stuff. Man, those are proud moments in my life, and, it's funny because I'm real bad with names, and I see some of them and I recognize faces and I know them and it's like, God, I wish I could remember his name, man.
Yeah.
But, and I'm, like always, I'm a, pretty straightforward guy and it's like, yeah, I remember you and I just don't remember your name. I'm sorry. I've gone through a few kids.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say.
And sometimes it's like, okay, is that Nixon? Is that United? Is Mercedes, maybe?
You had to go through all of it.
Yeah. San Antonio Homes, where did I know this guy from? but yeah, just seeing young men come up to me and say hi and introduce me to their kids and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
had the privilege and pleasure of coaching some of their kids and some of the
Mm-hmm.
guys that I coached. I'm coaching their kids and stuff, and wow, those are proud moments in my life. Just seeing other people succeed, I guess,
Yeah.
and that's what it's about, right? Helping each
Yes.
other out
Mm-hmm.
and try to better somebody else or somebody else's life, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, I guess it comes down to love, and that's what we're here for, to share our love with other people and help in any way possible. And I think that anybody that's been in my staff and that has worked with me, their lives and their kids are super important to me, and I'm I've got an open door and open policy, and I'll take my shirt off for them if that's what I need to do, to try to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I've just been blessed to have the relationships that I've had with our coaches and our coaching staffs and all the many coaches that I've gone through and
Yeah.
kids and the relationship with the kids. And I think those are no doubt the proudest moments that's brought me to where I'm at today. I think I'm a pretty easygoing guy and very happy and very blessed and very well rounded in life and some of the experiences that I've gone through. And my goal is to try to help anybody that I possibly can and in any possible way, and hopefully I can continue to plant some seeds and change some lives and help young men continue to be successful in the game of life. And I think that's probably what's more important to me than winning games.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Coach. You do a great job.
Yeah.
A great job of impacting in such a beautiful way. It's a beautiful way.
Sometimes I'm a little too stern, and I say, "Golly, I was pretty hard on that kid." But I always try to go back and talk to him and make him understand, where that frustration came from.
Yeah.
I think that I always mean well, and hopefully I can continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. And you sure will.
Yeah.
But the chapter's not closed yet. So we still got more to go.
Yeah, I got a little more to go. We'll see. I got to tell everybody now, it's like, hey, 1 year at a time.
Yes, sir.
I'm blessed with good health, and as long as I'm healthy, and like I say, I wake up in the morning, I still want to go to work, and it's easy. I've got a coach in my staff, Coach Oscar Villaseñor Oki. And he's been coaching for 52 years, going on 52.
Wow.
So, man, if that's not something that will keep me going, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, Coach, like, you're amazing. But he just, he loves it. He tells me, Coach, what am I going to do if I get out? He says, I'm not going to sit at home and,
Yeah.
wash dishes and cut the yard and have to do all those things. I enjoy coming to life, and
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that I'm part of his life and I get to share that joy with him. And if you can't understand how blessed I am and all those coaches that get to coach and be called coach, then something's wrong, because that's obviously quite an honor and quite special, to be called coach, because it's a special profession, and obviously I would recommend it to anybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Coach, for again sharing everything you've shared thus far and being so genuine with your responses. So yeah, that'll be the end of the episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Level Up Lounge podcast. We're gonna have more guests, more episodes like this. Just impact to go here for the whole show. And once again, thank you, Coach Sanchez, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, I love you, guy.
Love you too, Coach. Love you too.
You're obviously special, but it was a lot of fun.
Yep.
You know, and like I said, and if I can ever help you again, or you want to talk about something else, we'll sit down and talk.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll come to the huddle. We'll come to
There
the
you
huddle.
go.
All right, you guys. Well, as we end off every podcast episode, find a way to make someone's day better, spread positivity, and always wear your heart on your sleeve. God bless.
Amen.
A rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this